Most people think meningococcal disease begins with something dramatic, a collapse, a frightening rash, a moment so obvious no one could possibly miss it. But that is not always how it starts. Sometimes it begins quietly, with a fever that feels ordinary, a headache that seems explainable, a wave of tiredness that could easily be blamed on stress, poor sleep, or a mild seasonal illness. And that is what makes it so dangerous. The early signs can look small, familiar, even harmless, right before the situation changes with shocking speed. For middle-aged adults caring for children, grandchildren, or aging loved ones, this is the kind of health warning that matters not because it is common, but because missing it can cost precious time. In today's video, we are going to look closely at the early warning signs of meningococcal disease that people too often brush aside in the first critical hours. You will see why symptoms like sudden fever, severe headache, nausea, unusual sleepiness, stiffness, confusion, or cold hands and feet should never be dismissed too quickly when they appear together or worsen fast. We will also talk about why the rash people often associate with this illness may not appear right away, which means waiting for that one classic sign can be a serious mistake. This is not about fear. It is about awareness, calm observation, and knowing when a seemingly ordinary illness may be asking for urgent attention far sooner than most people realize. What makes meningococcal disease so dangerous is not only how serious it can become, but how ordinary it may look in the beginning. It can start with symptoms that feel like a common flu, a bad cold, or even simple exhaustion. That is why so many people miss the early warning signs. One of the first signs is often a sudden fever. The mistake many people make is assuming a fever is harmless on its own. But when fever appears together with other symptoms like a severe headache, vomiting, unusual tiredness, or confusion, it deserves much closer attention. The benefit of noticing that pattern early is simple. You are less likely to brush off something that may be becoming serious very quickly. In everyday life, this may look like someone who seemed mostly fine earlier in the day, then suddenly develops a fever and starts looking much more unwell than you would expect from a routine illness. Another early sign is a strong headache. Many people blame it on stress, dehydration, lack of sleep, or too much screen time. But a headache connected to meningococcal disease may feel unusually intense, especially when it comes with fever, nausea, light sensitivity, or neck stiffness. The practical lesson here is to stop looking at each symptom separately. When several warning signs appear together, the picture changes. For example, someone may say they never get headaches like this, then ask to lie in a dark room and seem increasingly uncomfortable and weak. Nausea and vomiting can also appear early. The problem is that these symptoms are easy to explain away as food poisoning or a stomach bug. But when vomiting is paired with fever, severe headache, or rapidly worsening weakness, it should not be dismissed. The value of seeing that connection is that it helps you act sooner instead of waiting for the illness to settle. In real life, this could be a person who becomes sick to their stomach, throws up, and instead of gradually feeling better, becomes more drained, pale, and hard to engage. Unusual tiredness is another warning sign that people often overlook. We all know what normal fatigue feels like. But this is different. This is the kind of sleepiness or weakness that feels out of proportion. Someone may become difficult to wake, unusually quiet, or unable to stay focused in a normal conversation. The common mistake is assuming they just need rest. But when that unusual drowsiness shows up with fever or headache, it should raise concern. The benefit of paying attention to that shift is that it may help you spot a serious problem before more dramatic signs appear. Neck stiffness is another symptom people have heard of, but it can still be misunderstood. A person may think they simply slept wrong or strained a muscle. But when neck stiffness appears together with fever and a strong headache, it takes on a different meaning. The small but important habit is to notice when a symptom is isolated and when it is part of a larger pattern. That awareness can prevent dangerous delay. Sensitivity to light is another clue that often gets missed. Many people think it just means tired eyes or a migraine. But when someone suddenly wants the lights dimmed, avoids bright rooms, and also has fever, headache, or nausea, it should not be ignored. The same goes for confusion or unusual behavior. If a person seems disoriented, answers slowly, forgets simple things, or does not seem fully aware of what is happening around them, that is a serious red flag. This is especially important because meningococcal disease can worsen very fast. Some people may also develop cold hands and feet, pale skin, body aches, or a feeling that they are suddenly getting much worse by the hour. That rapid decline matters. Sometimes the speed of worsening is itself one of the clearest warning signs. Then there is the rash, which many people associate with this illness. But one of the biggest mistakes is waiting for the rash before taking symptoms seriously. A rash may not appear early, and in some cases it may not appear at all. That means the absence of a rash should never create false reassurance. If a person has fever, severe headache, vomiting, unusual drowsiness, neck stiffness, confusion, or rapid worsening, those signs alone are already enough to take seriously. The most important takeaway is this: meningococcal disease can begin with symptoms that seem familiar. But what makes it different is the pattern, the intensity, and how fast things can change. You do not need every symptom to appear, and they do not always come in the same order. What matters most is noticing when someone looks much more ill than a typical everyday sickness would suggest. Calm awareness can make a critical difference. Before we go any further, pause for a second and ask yourself something honestly. If someone you love developed a fever tonight, complained of a crushing headache, said the light suddenly felt too sharp, and then became strangely quiet or hard to wake, would you recognize that as a possible emergency? Or would you tell yourself to wait until morning? This is the point where many people lose valuable time, not because they do not care, but because the symptoms can look so ordinary at first. That is what makes meningococcal disease so deceptive. It does not always begin with a dramatic sign that forces immediate alarm. Sometimes it begins with small clues that only become frightening when you place them together. Fever, headache, vomiting, weakness, confusion, stiff neck, cold hands and feet, a person who suddenly looks far more unwell than a common virus should cause. So, here's the real pattern interrupt. Do not wait for the illness to prove itself before taking it seriously. Do not wait for every symptom. Do not wait for a rash. And do not wait for the situation to become obvious if the person in front of you is clearly declining fast. The most important thing to remember from this video is simple. Meningococcal disease can begin like an everyday illness, but the warning signs often reveal themselves through speed, severity, and combination. A sudden fever with an unusually severe headache is not something to casually brush aside. Extreme drowsiness, confusion, neck stiffness, light sensitivity, vomiting, or a rapid change for the worse are all signs that should raise concern immediately. Even one detail may seem explainable on its own, but together they can tell a very different story. If there are only 2 or 3 things you remember after this video, let them be these. Notice when symptoms appear together. Notice when someone looks much sicker than expected. And never let the absence of a rash give you false comfort. Awareness is not panic. Awareness is protection. And if this message helped you see these warning signs more clearly, save this video and share it with someone close to you, because in a situation that can worsen this quickly, one moment of recognition may matter more than most people realize.